Hi, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I'm so glad on this episode to be talking with, can I say comics creator? Is that a way that you would identify yourself? Tully Jacob?
Yeah, you can call me whatever you want, man. I'm just a small town kid from Broken Bow, Oklahoma. So
Yeah,
any other
yeah,
label, just a the kid from Broken Bow. That's all I am.
yeah. I'm a kid from West Virginia, so I get that. I get that. Yeah, yeah. And all the other titles come along, but yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'll mention at the top of our discussion a book that I recommend people check out. I discovered it through the Excellence in Graphic Literature Awards a couple of years ago and featured it in a chapter about Native Indigenous stories in a book that I have coming out later on this year sometime if all things go well. You know how publishing is. It could be delayed or whatever, but
Right.
the book that you've worked on is Rez Detectives and really appreciate it a lot. And so we'll talk about that book and then any other projects that you would like to mention.
All right. Sounds great.
Yeah. So I like to generally ask about like author origins and sort of paths to creating. So, what was it about the world of comics and visuals that drew you in?
Well, for me, like comics was like basically like breathing. I mean, like from the moment I was born, I'm sure there was a comic book thrown in my hand or something. And like back in the day, you go to a doctor's office, there's some kind of comic book, and even if it was those Holy Bible graphic novels, I don't know if you ever saw those, but
Oh,
they'd have
yes.
those laying around. And then there were the like those little I, I forget what they're called, like the chick comics. You
Hmm.
find them like all over town, and it was
Yeah.
like, if nobody knows, these were like these crazy, like I guess they were like hyper religious, little, what do you call those little type of comics? Like
They
they,
were like booklets or pamphlets or
yeah, like
something. Yeah.
booklets, like Tijuana comics, but maybe we shouldn't say that. But they were like those comic, yeah, those little booklets, and they would talk about like how you should save your soul because Jesus is watching you and all this kind of
Uh-huh.
stuff, or
Uh-huh.
God's. So I've always found those that people would just lay those around at various spaces. You find them at like the post office or whatever. So I'd always collect those and read them. And I had a pretty high collection, and we'd read them. And my cousins would think they were stupid and silly, but I liked them. And the art was really good, actually, when you look at
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
And yeah, yeah. And so yeah, so that was basically me. Like I would grew up like I had a sister. She'd probably have more like the like Archie comics, Little Lulu, and that little devil kid. I forget what his name is. Hot Stuff, I think his name was.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
all those Sabrina comics. So I'd have that to read, and then my brother would have the superhero comics. So we'd have like Spider Man, Howard the Duck, um, Batman, of course,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
my dad. And this is probably like I probably shouldn't have at my age found these books, but there was a magazine called National Lampoon that
Uh-huh.
he would
Uh-huh.
get, and they were
Yep.
more adult comics. But again, there was good art. It was good humor because these were like these humor writers from like these like what do you call them, like uh Ivy League universities like Harvard and stuff like that, who would write these comic books. And I think they ended up making movies, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
They did
Yeah.
movies like I guess Vacation's one of their most famous ones. Wasn't that a National Lampoon?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it
And so
was.
they
Yeah.
actually began the career of like Harold Ramis and John Hughes, I guess,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
John Hughes wrote an article that was based on Vacation in National Lampoon. And so that, but in the National Lampoon, there was like this really interesting comic book about Bob Dylan, and it was called Zimmerman, and I thought it was a superhero story because it said Zimmerman, but that was
Uh-huh.
his original last name. His real last name is Robert Zimmerman. So I was reading it, and I was like, oh, this is, and it was good art too, but it was
Hmm.
actually about Bob Dylan's life, and then that got me interested in Bob Dylan, and so I listened to a lot of Bob Dylan music and things like that growing up, and so I'm like, I mean, I'm under 10 years old, and I'm absorbing all this stuff, so there's that desire to read these stories and like the stories, but then again, like it happens where most secret origins of indigenous creators that where am I in these stories? Where's my
Mm-hmm.
representation?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I? And every once in a while, you'll come across like a native dude, like Chief Manabats, or you'll see like maybe Lone Ranger and Tonto comic book somewhere. But you're like, it's still like we're still kind of behind because it's still, from a non-native perspective telling our stories. And so you're getting these really almost cheesy kind of stereotypical perspectives of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like New Mutants, I think had a what was her name, Danny Moonstar,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so that was one of the comic books I saw as a kid, and I was like, oh, this is really. It was Bill Sienkiewicz who did the art, so of course the art was really great. And you think because I liked all the art, I would lean more towards artists, but but I'm not that great of an artist, so I liked writing, and so that's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
where I
Mm-hmm.
want to be is almost kind of like work at representing us as human beings, as people, but giving us these heroic kind of things. If we're going to be superheroes, or like with Rez Detectives, we're going to have like a, and we were thinking Encyclopedia Brown, Harriet the Spy, and
Mm-hmm.
like Scooby Doo, and all those like kid detective stories that I grew up on and reading, and trying to put it within this like indigenous setting. And so that's kind of my secret origin of how I got from point A to to Rez Detectives, the book we're talking about today.
Oh, love it, love it. Well, and you're the first person that's come on that's mentioned the Chick comics, which I do remember, and National Lampoon. I haven't heard those as foundational for people just yet, but
Yeah, and Mad Magazine also.
oh
My dad
yeah,
was a Mad
yeah.
Magazine guy, and I think like a lot of adults like read Mad Magazine because it was kind of that satire of
Mm-hmm.
humor,
Mm-hmm.
and again, great art. There's Chuck Severin who was part of the arting team, and the guy who just recently died, Al Jaffe. They were like
Mm-hmm.
doing these really great stuff, and they're like the very few people do it, but they had the panel, like the side inside the panel art,
Uh-huh.
and I forgot who did that. But they would like it would be like a one joke like that was on the side of the page, and they would have like a just a drawing art of this joke. And I've never seen anyone would do it, but that seems like logically that would be something fun to do, is just to put little funny pieces between the panels.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that
Uh-huh.
was kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. That it's fun how you can do different things with the medium, and I always
Right.
appreciate it when I see something like that.
Hmm.
Um, so you mentioned Rez Detectives, and I mentioned it at the top of the episode. How did Rez Detectives come to be as a story? And I love hearing about like the inspirations too. So love that you talked about Scooby Doo and kind of the mystery aspects, but then also uh showing something that is more authentic than maybe some of the representations of indigenous experiences that people have created.
Right. So yeah, for me, like Res Detectives was something that Steve, Judd, and myself kind of talked around about, of like how we were wanting to look at children programming in on television.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we said, well, there's not really any shows that are about us. And so we kind of wrote this at first as a television script to try to sell around to different companies. But of course, it never really got off the ground. And so we kind of shelved it for a while and almost pretty much forgot about it. And again, it was, like I said, the whole thing of like finding representation of us, telling stories that we deem like that could be good for kids, because I have nieces and nephews, he has nieces, and I have a daughter now, and we want something that they could look at and read, and something like our kids self will read. Because Steve, he was also a comic book kid. His dog when he was a kid was named Thor Dog, and and his and he'd read Teen Titans comics, and he had a collection of those. And so for me, it was like for us, it was like we wanted something that our kids' selves could also enjoy, because like not every kid's gonna have access to National Lampoon, so we
Hmm.
gotta make sure our kids can get something that's readable and acceptable, And so we that's how we kind of created it, and we tried to sell it as a TV show. It never sold, and so we kind of fast forward a few years later. we're once again talking about comic books, and he's like, "Hey, I had this idea for this comic book," and we bounced it back and forth, and we kept talking about it. And he's like, "I just don't know where it's going to go yet." And then he said, "But if you have another idea, let's think about that." And so we're just pitching ideas back and forth to each other. And then we started thinking, "Hey, you remember that comic Rez or that script Rez Detectives we wrote?" And we were, yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, let's look back at that, dust it off, and see if we can turn that into a comic book. And
Hmm.
so we
Hmm.
went back, we looked at it, and we said, okay, yeah, it translates pretty well. It's a short, it's a short script, so it could hit, within the short a short book. And so we said, let's go ahead and write it. So yeah, we were friends with Ken Christensen, who has written comic books. He's written Todd, the Ugliest Kid in the World. I believe he wrote Air, and he no, he didn't write Air, but he produced the Netflix show of The Punisher. He's written on the TV show Happy, and he's done a lot of work like comics and in television, and I think even film. And so he kind of became a friend of ours, and he has worked with the M.K. Perker, who was an artist who has done a lot of like DC and Marvel comics. He's real well known in Turkey. He's like one of the like most famous comic book artists in Turkey, and he's like won like all these crazy awards. And so we were like, he's like, well, this dude, I usually work with him as an artist. He'd probably be great for this work because he writes really, just kind of stylized that he can make it fit into a comic book style of children comic book. And so we said, okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
let's let's meet with them, let's talk with them. MK Perker was on board, so we brought him in, and so we wrote the script, and he kind of even helped us by saying, because like a lot of times when I write a comic book script, I write page, panel, because that's how I was taught how to do it. But
Hmm.
he's like, no, just leave it like as a screenplay, and I'll just use that, and then I can break it down into the panels, which is like easier for us because we don't have to think of what each panel is going to be and how it's going to lay out on the page. And so he was like, "All right, so we'll do that, and then I'll get it back to you, and within like these several months, once he could get it done." And had a pretty quick turnaround within like less than a year. He kind of did it all. He drew it, penciled, ink, and colored it all like
Nice.
within a
Wow.
year. So
Yeah.
so that I mean that's a lot of work. I mean, and so in case people don't know, like comic books are kind of what do you call kind of like a factory kind of thing where the writer
Hmm.
writes the script, the art one artist pencils it, another artist inks it, and then another artist colors it. And so usually it's not always the same one person, and that's how they are able to get comic books out monthly, so to
Hmm.
speak.
Hmm. It's a pretty work intensive process from what I understand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then further than that, there's letterers and those kind of things. And so we had a separate letterer who did the lettering for us, and that came to us through the publisher, which is
Yeah.
the name of the publisher is
Literati, is that right?
Literati Press. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
Literati
Uh-huh.
Press.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was gonna ask, because Rez Detectives is a book, as you said, it can be appealing to children. I'm 40 in my early 40s, and I enjoyed it. So, what do you hope that readers take away from experiencing the book?
I well, for me, like I guess when they ask who's this audience, who's your audience, they say. So for me, the main audience, like I said, was those uh, indigenous kids who
Hmm.
want to see themselves in stories that represent them, and hopefully a good way. And so it's on that level, that's the main thing, is that you know the takeaway is that, oh yeah, I love the story, this is who I am, this is really helped represent us. And so even like a program called Illuminative uh donated, like I believe, like I might get the numbers wrong, but I think they got like about like of the comic books and donate them to the local libraries on reservations
Nice,
in
nice.
an effort to like uh what do you call it, like make a bring up the child's self-worth of feeling, because I don't know if you know this, but in our native amongst our native people, the suicide rate is very high.
Hmm,
And
hmm.
so in order to address that, they wanted to do something like this where say, you could you could write, you could draw, you could create, you could even feel connected to these characters and know that you could do all these kind of things. So there's this feeling of self-worth that you should have is very high, because we're very important people, we're always been here, and don't like feel like your life is less than, and so that
Hmm.
was one of the things that we which was a good takeaway that we wanted, is to kind of give a yourself self-worth some validity. And so
Hmm, hmm.
that's one of the takeaways. And the other takeaway is that hopefully it's a good fun story. It plays off the tropes of the detective stories, and we're trying to the hard-boiled aspect of detective stories, and we wanted to do that. And it's also that screwball comedy
Hmm.
kind of thing that happens where whereas the boy is a little screwball kid who interrupts this person's normal tip life, and they have
Hmm.
all these adventures. And it's almost like Nick and Nora, or those moonlighting shows, or those kind of things where there's those two aspects of people.
Yeah, yeah. One of the other things I love about the book too is the use of languages in the book. I loved seeing
Hmm.
that. So that was another interesting aspect for me to see. An indigenous language represented there too.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like a lot of us indigenous native cats around here, they're one of the things is like to kind of uh revitalize our languages. And so that too, of course, was the reason why we wanted to put the language in, to say, oh, here's words that people can say, and not just Choctaws will see it, but now non-natives will see it and say, or people who are not Choctaw will see it and say, oh, I do know a word now, I do know this, I do know that. Oh, this there's
Hmm,
like this cultural aspect to it.
hmm.
And but I guess at the end of the day, you still want it to be entertaining. So hopefully that happens too
Oh,
within the book,
absolutely,
while having
absolutely,
all these.
yeah.
I always think of like when you write, you're doing like a layer cake of some kind, and you're putting all these little yummy stuff inside it. And so you want to make sure that the cake is tasty, but there's
Hmm.
still stuff within it that you can find and say, oh, this was good too, and this was good. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
one of the things that was pointed out to me that I didn't even think about it. I don't know if Steve thought about, but someone said, this is a STEAM book, which is I think science, technology, engineering, and I don't know what the A is, but in M is mathematics, I think.
Hmm.
But it's
A
about
might be A might be art, maybe.
art. Okay, art and mathematics.
I might be
But they
wrong
would
on that, but I think
okay.
maybe.
I I need to know because I'm about to I'm trying to work on a book, another comic about using STEAM concepts. So
I love it,
I've been
love it.
learned before I start acting like I know what I'm talking about. But anyways,
You
but
were
yeah, so
good. You got it. You got the art. It works.
yeah, and so people were saying, someone said, yeah, this is a STEAM book because it does talk about how you do the air in the fan, and all these other kind of things of like using science and these kind of things, and forensics, right? Forensic science. And so we're like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, we can always sell it as that if we need to. And so
Yeah, yeah. I just fact checked that for you. The A does in fact stand for art. So, but
okay,
but
so
that's
science,
it's gonna be there.
technology,
Hmm.
engineering, art, and mechanics,
Math.
math. Okay, math.
Yes.
Okay,
Which there's a lot of mechanics in math, so it works. And you got the engineering there. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's awesome. I was gonna
yeah, yeah.
ask about works in progress, upcoming things. Res Detectives is one of those that has like Res Detectives and a subtitle. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say I would love to see, more as a series there if Literati is interested in doing that. But yeah, so it sounds like you have a an upcoming project in the world of Steam, not steampunk. That's a different thing.
Right, right.
Um,
Well, maybe we could. It could be STEAM with all the science stuff, but in a punk setting.
I
That'd
love
be
it.
kind
I
of
love it.
cool to think
Yeah.
about how we can do that to show like because steampunk is based in like the Victorian era, correct?
Usually. Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
it's like with like what is it like sci-fi kind of?
Yeah. Yeah. So like a classic setting, an older setting, but then you get like these weird technologies that wouldn't necessarily be there. Yeah.
Yeah. So in essence, we probably could. That's something to think about because it'd be fun. Is to do like a steampunk, but using factual science to
hmm
create something
hmm
out of it, as
Yeah.
opposed to like something's going to fly based on whatever. But we could say, well, scientifically, we could say an air balloon put together could probably lift a ship almost like
hmm
up, but a big giant air balloon or something. But anyways,
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
thinking. I'm gonna actually steal that and say
By
and
all
use it for
means,
our
hey,
steam our
take it,
steam,
take
but
it.
because yeah, so yeah, I'm working with the university here, Oklahoma State University, and there was discussion of how there's very little STEAM uh, education in Native populations,
hmm
or like there's probably like individually in each tribe there is, but there's very little like books or that kind of information. And so we were like, well, we should probably contribute to it and try to create something. So I'm meeting with people with the American Indians and medicine and sciences. I think they're AIMS, and they're talking about doing a STEAM book. And so when we were talking about it, they were like, let's do this. Uh, maybe we should do it as a comic book because we were thinking about middle grade people, and they
hmm
said that'd probably be more attractive for those cats because they like to read comics all the time.
Yeah.
And there was like a God, what is it called? Like graphic medicine? Is there
hmm
such a book? Yeah, where they talk about like health issues and things like within a story setting. So now we're talking about doing stories with STEAM elements. So that's kind of
Nice.
that thing.
Love it.
And
Love it.
I don't know why I went to that, but
Yeah,
there's that.
upcoming projects. I was asking about upcoming
Okay.
projects and things. You also have, so I was going to ask about spaces for people to connect online. So you have your own podcast. If
Yes.
you want to
Yes.
share about that and any websites or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, we have a podcast called Real Indigenous, REEL
Oh,
Indigenous,
nice, nice. Uh-huh.
and in that one, yeah, it's a group of filmmakers, actors, writers who kind of get together and talk about like representation in media of indigenous. A lot of times it's in the this area Native American realm, but we also do we try to talk more about more world indigenous stuff. So we kind of get out there with that. And every once in a while, we'll have interviews with creators and filmmakers and writers and those kind of cats who do media. So what we call it is like everything on the screen and in between. So it
Nice,
doesn't have
nice.
to just be what's on the film, but also other stuff that has native representation that we want to explore and talk about media.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I will link the podcast when I share this.
Okay, cool, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, glad to do that. Final official air quotes question, and then we could talk about anything that we've missed. Any folks that are working in comics and or film that you want to shine a light on as we close out our talk? Anybody that identifies as Native Indigenous that you'd like to just briefly mention so that people can go and check them out?
Oh man, you should tell me. I forgot about this part. Maybe you told me earlier in the pre-interview.
I did not. I did not. I
Okay,
should have
okay,
prepared you.
because I'm the worst with names and everything, so I'm going to do my best, as you can tell, because I can't remember King Kristen's name. But so like some of the things that like we were saying before we recorded is like we're starting to get a lot of indigenous uh content getting out there, and
hmm
we're wanting to keep that moving forward. And so like for instance, Echo is a TV show that Marvel is doing that's going to be out hopefully soon. I don't know when the release
hmm
date was said, but they're the Echo is supposed to be my tribe, which is Choctaw, so that's a
hmm
big plus. And so they came down to our tribe nation and met with our cultural people and our
Good, good.
our chief and all that, and kind of talking about making sure that it's quote unquote authentic. And a lot of people I know, a lot of people our friends have worked on the show and done things. And I know there's like NDAs and stuff. But once you get into you know Choctaw reservation communities,
Hmm, hmm.
everybody knows what everybody else is doing. So I'm trying
Right.
not to say too much to give away who,
Absolutely.
what
Absolutely.
happened. But I, but I do know, and I don't even know if it's even been stated that she's Choctaw, but I said it on the other podcast, so I guess it's cat's out of
And
the bag
it's
already.
in the comics, right? It's there. So yeah.
Yeah, but I think she's something else. I think she's like I want to say she's Apache, maybe. I can't remember. She's a
Oh,
different
okay.
tribe. She's not Choctaw, so that's what's
Uh,
cool about it. And
that is
so
cool. That is cool.
that's definitely cool. And then there's of course Sterling Harjo's having his final season of Reservation Dog, and he's kind of getting out there and trying to sell other shows and movies and things like that. So I'm really really excited about that. There's like writers that have been on our podcast that we've talked with who have a lot of books out. There's Tom Hamada who has done who's writing horror films. I mean horror books and also working in film and television. I mean I can go on forever, but
Yeah, yeah.
we got the American Indian Film Festival, which is coming up in November. You got the LA Skins Fest, which is coming up, I believe, in around October, November. I'm I just got through seeing Erica Tramblay's movie, which is called Fancy Dancing, which is a really great movie, and it really has that real feel of like a independent film vibe from like during the heyday of independent films, where
Mhm.
it was about not really about story, but about characters and how that affects the story. And so we really like follow this really great actress, Lily Gladstone, who is this character that you really like, who by all means is probably like not a great person, but you really understand her. And that's what
Mhm.
those old school, like the 80s and 90s independent cinema was like, where
Oh yeah.
it was about like people on the edge of our societies and then how we have to understand them. And she's also going to be in the Martin Scorsese movie, which is called Killers of the
Killers
Flower
of
Moon.
hmm.
She's the
Nice.
lead actress. And so there's a lot of hype talking about what she does and what she's doing in that. So that's been kind of cool. And then there's like I said, there's a lot of things going on. There's like around here, there's this group called the Antis, and they're a comedy group who do these stand-up routines. And so if you see them around, check them out because they're funny as all get out. And they're three women, and if I could remember her name, I would say it. But
It's
so
good.
we'll
It's
just say
good.
there's three aunties. Let's edit that part out. But three aunties, and so that's comedy stuff going on. And then what else? There's a group here that I'm sitting with on whatever you call it right now. It's, I guess, a board of the Indian Territory Film Festival that they're trying to do here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and
Hmm, hmm.
they're planning to show a movie in October during uh, Indigenous Peoples Weekend. And so then what else is there? Books, movies, comic books. Of course, Jay Myers has produced Prey with
Hmm,
Amber Midthunder
which
as
is
the lead
amazing.
role,
Hmm.
which is a great movie. And they just got through getting an Emmy nod. So hopefully they go all the way with the Emmy win. So we're kind of hoping for that and excited for that. And Jane Myers is was like one of our big advocates, early on when we were, starting out our careers and everything. And she still is, and she's still helpful to a lot of people and all those kind of things. So we're doing that. And she has a daughter, Pishawn Brad, who has made a short film, and she's working in the industry. And pretty much all her kids are doing something. And
Nice,
so,
nice.
so that's kind of cool. That it's like this, generational familial thing. And same with the Amber Midthunder, because her mom's a casting agent, her dad's an actor, and so it's like almost like those the Barrymores or the all those those family passed down from to act in the industry kind of thing, family industry
Hmm,
people. So those are all the kind of crazy things that I'm into. I'm digging on. There was a comic that came out, I believe it's called Kill Columbus, which was
hmm,
written
hmm.
by a native cat, and I forget his name now. Do you know his name?
I don't. I don't. I'll have
Okay.
to. I'll look it up and I'll mention it.
Yeah, look it up and mention because the names escape me. But we did an interview with him about one of his novels, and he's a writer, and of course, like I said, Sierra uh, Ornelas, who did Rutherford Falls, she's out there writing a lot of comedy stuff. So hopefully we'll get to see something coming from her. And
Yeah.
Jana Schmieding, the actress from that, is very funny, a great comedian. So hopefully we'll see more stuff with her. And of course, everybody loves Taika Waititi, so we give a shout
Oh,
out to
yes, yes.
our New Zealand family.
Yeah,
And
yeah. So you're talking about Taika Waititi.
yeah, Taika Waititi, and like I said, at least with me, we're indigenous people of the world, so I like to try to encompass as many of the great, storytellers and filmmakers out there, and like Canada, especially doing some great stuff up there, and Australia. Um, and I saw a movie recently that was really good. It was a documentary, and it was and I of course I can't remember it, but it was about the lost generation where they were basically the government was taking kids from their homes and putting them in to adoption to white families in order to the same thing that happened here. I mean, I guess honestly that's the whole thing too. It's like there was a playbook. I'm sure there's like a colonizer playbook somewhere where
Hmm, hmm.
where they
Yep.
all had a plan of how they dealt with this.
On
It's
some
like
old
everywhere
scroll.
we
Yep.
go, it's like they do the exact same thing here too. So
Yeah.
so they had a plan, man. They had a plan. But anyways, that kind of thing that happened of trying to deculturalize us and cultural genocide is what it's called.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of like what happened there. And God, I wish I remember that movie too. It just came out recently, like last month. And so I got to see that when I was in Australia. And then, yeah, New Zealand, everywhere, all over. There's all these great filmmakers. I wish I could name them all, but, look them up. You'll find them.
Yep.
Great
Yep.
stuff out there.
And as I said, I'll link the podcast Real Indigenous so that listeners can go and check that out, follow, click like and subscribe, all those kind of things. Yeah, so the last thing I was going to mention, and then we can hit anything that we've missed, is that you mentioned you're close to OSU. Um, and I think I have some connections there, some acquaintances in Craig
Mm-hmm.
Hill. I think he's English literacy, Barbara McClanahan, and then Mary Beth Nottingham, and they all do like comics and literacy. So I might drop this video into their Facebook group, which
Okay,
is
cool.
GNAT, and might have to be like, hey, do you know Tvli Jacob? Because it would be great to connect. So,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Have them reach out to me. And yeah, my friend Lindsay Smith, she runs the Poets and Writers
oh, nice, nice.
program here. And so I'm sure she knows them. I'm sure I've met them. I just don't remember them. But um, I will be doing a workshop coming up, and I don't know what the dates are of about graphic novel writing. So
Nice, nice. I'll have to, as I said, I'll drop this into their Facebook group. It's happening. So they can know your work and probably already do know your work, I would imagine, with Rez Detectives because they follow graphic novels pretty
right,
closely.
right,
So
right.
yeah.
Oh,
So
cool.
anything that I've missed that you want to make sure to share before we close out, and if you missed any names, just let me know and I'll record a little rundown of anybody that you want to shout out.
Okay, yeah, nothing really. I mean, like I said, I mean, I could talk all day about other people and if I could remember who their names are or what they're doing. But yeah, that's definitely just check out, just do a quick search of indigenous, whatever you're interested, indigenous filmmakers, indigenous writers, indigenous artists, indigenous fashion designers. They're all out there, just pop them up and see who they are and explore all the multitude of people who are doing great and beautiful things, man. I mean, we had we just had Indigipop X, which was a native and indigenous Comic Con
Oh,
here in
nice,
Oklahoma
nice.
City about 2 months ago or so. And so they're always doing some great stuff. And uh excuse me,
Hmm.
and the guy who ran it owns a comic book shop in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he's like it's probably like one of the first or only indigenous owned comic book shop. And he also is a writer. He's published. He's a PhD guy. He's like just all around cool dude, man. And so it's good to have those cats. And
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with it. I did write a script for him about reservation dog, like actual reservation dogs. Like I think it was for awareness,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
reservation dog awareness. I'm sure. I guess they're still working on the art and stuff, but I did do something with them, so maybe that'll come out sometime.
Yeah, yeah.
So good to look out for
That would be
that.
great to see. Great to see.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so yeah. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. So yeah, for me personally, I'm working on like stuff, and so hopefully they'll be coming out. I'm working on this like script that's going forever. Working with this editor, so we'll see how that goes. And
nice.
also writing another kid's comic about a reservation dog. This one's kind of more like a kid horror comic.
Awesome, awesome. So it sounds like things are on the way, and may the creating and storytelling continue. And glad to have you back on anytime as work is released as well.
All right, man. Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot for having me on. And yeah, just reach out to me anytime you want to talk about something. I'm always down to talk. As you can tell, I don't ever shut up. So
No, no, you're good. It's been a great conversation. And yeah, I'll share this back with you. And thanks so much for talking with me.
all right, cool, man. I appreciate it, bro. Take care,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, you do the same. Thanks.
All right, later.
Later.